Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am Jaime and Fuego, and so very stoked to be presenting to everybody here at Phoenix FearCon, a Hail to Stephen King panel presented by The Horror Show that has an amazing group of guests. First and foremost, he is the man to my right from Mike's book reviews. We have Mike Kerns, and then we have Blu Gilliand from Cemetery Dance. And we have a former panelist of mine from a Dark Tower bit that we did at the Phoenix the Phoenix Comic-Con, Sarah Wagstaff. And then last but not least, we have Louis
Sytsma.
Sytsma, yes. Thank you, sir. From the
No
Stephen
problem.
King podcast. And I am so very stoked to have this Ka-Tet reconvening. Due to some technical difficulties, we did not get the previous attempt as proper as possible. But yeah, I'm just going to loop it around to everybody so they can give you a little bit about their constant reader or tower junkie, depending upon how deeply they have dove. And I'm going to start with Mr. Mike, first and foremost.
I am Mike, and I am a constant reader, and I have no problems doing this again because it's kind of like how I wish Stephen King would redo Dark Tower 6 and 7 again. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, amen to that. Another turn of the wheel, right? And I'm going to throw it over there to Sir Blue from CD.
Hey, I'm Blu Gilliand with Cemetery Dance, and I've been a constant reader since I was probably too young to be reading Stephen King. In my early teens, I first discovered his work. Pet Cemetery was my first introduction, and I just couldn't get enough after that, and just glad to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to toss it over to Our Lady of the Ka-Tet, Miss Sarah.
Hi. Yeah, basically, I've been a constant reader since I was a little girl, and I had no idea. This time around, I looked around, I was just like, oh yeah, but Stand By Me was my first. Like, I had no idea Stephen King was even involved, like, because I was so small when I saw Stand By Me. And but my first book was either Dark Tower or Talisman, one of those, and I've been reading Stephen King ever since.
Excellent, excellent. And then to the relative podcast, Sir Lou.
Hello, greetings from Canada, everybody. It's Louis Sytsma here from the Stephen King podcast. Stephen King and I have been, I've been a constant reader of his since I was about, 15, 16, when I discovered The Shining, that's the silver foil edition, and went back and read the previous one, Carrie and Salem's Lot, and I've been following ever since. And he's kind of like my big brother. He's slightly more than 10 years older than me, so I've been following him and in his wake, and just traveling along and reading all the great stories that he's put out.
Excellent, excellent. So just to give some clarification, everybody, this is basically King on the screen. Everything about this panel, and despite the fact that we are constant vigilant readers, is the fact that King has so prolifically had his work adapted to screen, most notably with Carrie, which is going to see an anniversary next year. And so just to throw it over to my dude Mike's book reviews, a constant reader that I hold in the highest regard and supremely respect. What are, between television and film, since we're trying to streamline this panel a little bit on the second attempt, what are some of your favorite adaptations, whether on the small screen or the big screen, dude?
I mean, I think everyone's going to say Shawshank Redemption. I know it's kind of like the go-to answer now, but I mean, I think it's the go-to answer because it's just a great, great film. To me, something that'll always kind of be special to me on television is the adaptation of It, because I think you and I, Jaime, are alone on that island that feel that the TV miniseries is the superior version of that adaptation. So I know that there's some things that haven't aged well or whatever, and yeah, I know Pennywise might not have been quite as scary in that as he was on the page. I still feel like that was a really great adaptation, so I'll always kind of hold it in a special place there. But also, yeah, like Sarah said, Stand By Me. That was the first movie by Stephen King that my parents let me watch because they didn't know there was stuff like Euphoria, pile of shit, and stuff like that in it. So I was allowed to get away with it. But those two will always be really, really special to me.
Nice, man. Absolutely. So we're going to throw it over to Sir Blue then. What are some of your favorite adaptations, whether it's on the small screen stuff that we saw, like miniseries or whatever, or on the bigger screen in the theatrical format?
Well, one I want to mention is one that's kind of lived in the shadow of the Shawshank Redemption as being another Stephen King prison movie, also directed by Frank Darabont, and that's Green Mile. I absolutely love that movie. I think it's one of the best as far as finding that real heart that King puts in his written word and bringing it up on the screen. It had a fantastic cast, fantastic look. I love Shawshank, but Green Mile is right up there for me. I also love one that's a little, probably a lot less known than that, and that's The Night Flyer, which was done back in the 90s. It's an adaptation of a short story of King's about a journalist at Inside View, which I think we all know that name from Dead Zone and from some of the other King novels. And it's this guy who gets, on the trail of a serial killer who is going into all these small rural airports. And it kind of looks like maybe it's a vampire. And then when the guy finally catches up with him, we see the truth of it. So it's a great little movie. Again, I don't know that it's streaming anywhere. It's very hard to find these days, but definitely one that I recommend people seek out.
Nice, yeah. Night Flyer was one. Unfortunately, I spent a lot more for the DVD than I probably would have liked. Unfortunately, I spent like $20-$30, whatever it was. And so, yes, Miguel Ferrer, rest peacefully. Awesome guy in that regard.
Yes.
Sarah, what are a couple adaptations that stick out to you specifically?
Well, Stand By Me was like my top because it really influenced me as a child. It was one of those mistake films that my dad took me to that, thought it was about just, couple kids doing some stuff and then of course the language and then the subject matter and all of that. And, I was probably way too young to be watching it. And Will Wheaton's, about to shoot Kiefer Sutherland and, just a heavy subject matter and language in the movie is just still just stuck in my mind. Firestarter was one that one of the first books I read by King, and then saw the movie and thought it held up with what he put on the page, and so I just kind of was rolling after that. Another one that we didn't talk about, I really enjoyed Secret Window, and with Johnny Depp, and it's all about a writer that thinks that he's, someone comes up to him and says he's plagiarized an entire book, and King always had a good and always does have a good way of pinpointing people's fears, a pilot not being able to land. And as a writer, your biggest fear is that you're going to steal. And so I really enjoyed that one as well. Shawshank, of course, awesome in every way. So that's what I was bringing to the table today.
There you go. Rad status. Yeah, I actually love Secret Window. In some ways, I like the different ending a little bit better because it's kind of hinted at in the source material in 4 Past Midnight. But yeah, man, Johnny Depp is great in that, despite the fact that he's found himself in all kinds of trouble as of late with his estranged wife or whatever. But yeah, that's a solid one. John Turturro is the guy who's like, you stole my story. Terrific. So, and then I toss it over to our Stephen King podcaster himself, Lou. What are a few small screen and bigger theatrical adaptations you think are of note to mention?
Well, I'm going to be predictable with The Shawshank Redemption because I think it's one of those adaptations that rare adaptations that's superior to the source material. It's a more fairy tale-ish version of the source material, which is actually a bit hard-edged and mean. If you read the short story or the novella again, it's kind of like, whoa, this is a lot grimmer than I remember. Because you watch the movie so many times, it takes that edge off of it quite a bit. And then I'm going to say, thinking on this even more since the last time we talked, I think there's a fantastic double bill now available to us, and that would be because of Mike Flanagan's fantastic work with Dr. Sleep. I think that now with that and The Shining, it retroactively has made The Shining a more enjoyable Stephen King adaptation for me, because even though I liked The Shining before Dr. Sleep, I liked it as a cinematic piece of work, but not as a Stephen King adaptation. But I think Dr. Sleep now injects that missing warmth that Stephen King always complains about in The Shining. And I just think that makes a fantastic double bill, and I highly recommend to anybody who hasn't seen the extended edition to watch that version of the Dr. Sleep, because it's to me it's an instant classic. I know we throw that term around pretty easily nowadays, but I think Flanagan, Lord, I'm just praying that he threw his hat in the ring. I just hope that somewhere down this the path that he does get involved with the Dark Tower, because that would just be bananas.
Yeah.
I would love that. Green Mile's up there for me. Stand By Me, Misery. Kathy Bates, wow, she just came out of nowhere and just killed it with that role. And she even does probably a more nuanced, better work in Dolores Claiborne. TV shows, I'm going to say The Dead Zone. I know Blue has a different opinion of that series, but the first 4 seasons rocked. This season is a disaster. But and maybe the Matrix kind of special effects haven't aged as much. I haven't watched this series in a bit now, but I think Anthony Michael Hall is pretty good as Johnny Smith. So those would be my. We're not talking about miniseries here, are we?
This was just about like any adaptation.
Okay, and then I have to throw in The Stand, because that first opening scene at the base is probably one of the best scenes of Stephen King adaptation from page to cinema. The rest of the miniseries is not quite as strong. I still have a lot of fondness for the original. That opening scene and Don't Fear the Reaper, like what a perfect marriage of music and video.
Yeah, amen. And that's actually one of the things that I was going to mention as well, is that was one of the first Stephen King things that I'd like genuinely recall is seeing the opening with that song. I didn't hear Don't Fear the Reaper with a cowbell and, like chubbed out Will Ferrell or anything. I saw it like just circling over dead scientists. And it's also, it's at the beginning of the book, as you guys obviously know, being CRs and stuff. And the fact that they adapted the circle opening from the uncut, which, King added back into the, narrative and stuff, was just so brilliantly done. Larry Underwood is my favorite character that King has ever done. Wireman is very close from Doomakey, but as far as somebody I relate to, as far as being a flawed person who tries to do the right thing but doesn't always make the right choices sort of situation, yes, it does drag in its back half, but man, what a dynamic performance from dude playing Randall Flagg. I forget the name of the actor, but as much as I love Skarsgård's older brother, I'm really curious what sort of charisma or lack thereof he's going to bring to the proceedings in this new version we're going to see on CBS All Access. So that's definitely my small screen choice. But as far as big screen, The Mist, everybody loves Shawshank and The Green Mile, but there is something about Thomas Jane's performance in that. The fact that me and Cecil are creature people, and we just love seeing that Lovecraftian nastiness jumping from the otherworldly whatevers. That's tremendous. And also the fact that some of the nastiest villains and just people and just creatures, I guess, that we see are those people who are just sowing discord and dissent and so on and so forth. And then also the Dead Zone. And to piggyback on the Johnny Smith thing that Lou mentioned, I went into this last time we tried to record this and made very clear-cut mention that it's my favorite Steve King adaptation, and it's so timely in this particular state. Not to get into anything political, as a registered independent here in the States, I'm not left or right in that particular regard, but as far as like the crazy prophetic aspect of everything that book entails, and I love the first half and the mystery aspect, and the fact that it was, in my estimation, King trying to write the great American novel, and I feel like Cronenberg just kind of condensed it down to something so compelling and he kind of trimmed the fat, so to speak, in a really awesome way. Man, it's a terrific film, and I always think about that line where he says, "You are either in possession of a newfound ability or something very old," to paraphrase. And I used that in a song from one of my earlier bands like a decade ago because I thought it was just creepy and really cool. So,
my favorite moment is the ice is gonna break. I love that scene.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. So, yes, Dead Zone, and I have to follow Lou's lead and check out Anthony Michael Hall in that particular role. But so as to steamroll through the proceedings and make sure everything is moving along speedily. Mike, I gotta ask, what are some of your most disappointing adaptations, whether small screen or big screen, my friend?
I mean, where to start? I mean, as much as I love the guy, you got to admit there's way more bad to choose from here when it comes to the adaptations than the good. But I think it has to be Dark Tower, just because I stumped for them to make a movie of that for a decade plus, and then it was so bad I didn't even go to the theater and see it because it just didn't look like Dark Tower to me, like, at all. And I never trust Sony with these kind of things. Sony's always just been like a cash grab with titles. And I think what I said last time was I felt like whoever was in charge of making that movie got handed the 7-book box set, turned it around, read the synopsis, and said, "Let's make a movie." That's what they knew about that movie. So that or the new Pet Sematary probably had to be like my biggest just complete letdowns in the theater, where I was just, or actually I didn't see that one, but I did see Pet Sematary in the theater, and I was so angry I had to bite my hat from not yelling out loud in the middle of the theater. TV. The Langoliers by a long shot. I look at the cast they had for the Langoliers. I'm like, this cast is phenomenal. How is it this awful? But I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to say Tommyknockers, but I think that's just everybody knows that Tommyknockers is bad. But Langoliers just to this day completely just baffles me. How do you make a miniseries that basically is longer than it takes to read that story and make it make no sense whatsoever? So I know you just did your recap of that collection, and I'm going to be revisiting here when I do my Into the Multiverse stuff. Yeah. And I can't wait to reread Langoliers because it'll be the first time since high school. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, I can't help but say Langoliers is just god awful television. I just don't get it.
Yeah, Langoliers is one of the few, Mike, that I would be very up for a remake with, proper technology and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. I mean, that would look so much better. They didn't have a terrible cast in the previous one, but,
You don't want, like, them Sonic the Hedgehog, like, Langoliers Microsoft Paint adaptation they made there?
Which is exactly what they looked like. My God, yeah. It was terrible effects in that regard. Blu, what are some that just disappointed you, whether it was a theatrical release or something that you saw on TV, man?
Well, I've definitely got to echo Mike in both the Dark Tower and Pet Sematary. Just were the Pet Sematary remake were just so disappointing. Even though I knew with Dark Tower, I knew going in I was going to be disappointed. I just had no idea how disappointed I could be. Pet Sematary, my expectations for that were a little higher, but proved to. They shouldn't have been, obviously. So, but for me, one of the biggest disappointments was the Bag of Bones miniseries that was done with Pierce Brosnan. I love that book. I think it's a book that doesn't get as much attention as it should. It's a great ghost story. It's a great, King in his wheelhouse of talking about small towns and the secrets that they hold and the way that inevitably that's going to come back to haunt them. And you've got a great ghost story, and you've got a love story that he pulled off between a husband and a wife who is dead on the first page of the book. And yet we still get to know her and still get to know their relationship. So, just an incredible feat when he wrote that book. And the miniseries was just the total opposite of the words incredible feat. It was just bland and boring and dull and a big disappointment.
Yeah, we love you, Nick Garris, but all your adaptations are not necessarily good. So.
Yeah,
exactly.
Nice. Yeah, that's the thing about Bag of Bones. I've really ragged on it a whole lot, and it's one that I need to revisit. I mean, that and Dreamcatcher are the two that I've said are my least favorite King adaptations, and I need to at least give them another chance potentially. I like the stuff with Rita, and I love that Ralph Roberts from Insomnia shows up briefly, at least as far as the text goes. But in the film adaptation, yeah, Pierce was it was lackluster. The Mr. Burns status that they went with, the father-in-law or whatever, it just didn't necessarily work for me. So, Sarah, what are a few of your disappointments? What are some of the worst King stuff, whether in a theater or stuff that you saw on a smaller screen?
Right. Well, I kind of went over them pretty much. Dark Tower was, one of those where I kind of just went in a little bit optimistic, seeing the production value, and then it sailed into the toilet pretty quickly. Like, you just kind of like, you just wanted it. You're just like, oh, maybe, please, and then like, please. And there were a couple of good scenes where I was just like, okay, that was a good, they pulled that one out. And Idris Elba was pretty awesome. I was, loved his rendition of Roland, but it just didn't matter because it didn't come together at all. And, and it's just too bad to see that when you love the source material so much and you've invested so much time hoping that someone's going to do a good adaptation of it. Another one was Bag of Bones. Yeah, I felt that was just very two-dimensional, pretty boring. I sat through the whole thing, which, as we discussed in the previous, that doesn't happen for me. Won't. I'll just turn it off if I don't like it. And I sat through the whole thing just because I love the source material that much. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. The lighting. I mean, even just the lighting was bad. And
You guys are making me glad I didn't watch Bag of Bones.
Yeah,
It's bad, Mike.
Absolutely nothing good you can say about that.
I've watched some bad. More than once I've watched some bad ones, but I'm really glad I skipped this one.
Now, so just off topic, has anybody seen Mixed Desperation adaptation? Because that's another one that for me is pretty rough. Aside from Ron Perlman,
Perlman's good.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's not good either.
Who's in Desperation?
A lot of the knowns, actually, except for Perlman.
Yeah, Perlman plays the sheriff, and he's the guy who takes in the couple at the beginning of the book and, incarcerates them and stuff. And yeah, that's another one that it was just very, very vanilla, very just kind of by the books. And I mean, I know when Mick has to deal with those television constraints, maybe it's a little bit different because most of the stuff that he curated with Masters of Horror is badass and awesome. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a different sort of beast there, I guess. But Lou, what are some of your disappointments, good stuff?
Disappointments or worst?
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of combing those together.
Conflating those two.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, for disappointments, I'll go along with Pet Sematary remake. I think we were all expecting with better effects again and a more modern storytelling sensibilities that could have turned into quite a wonderful thing. But if you don't get the heart of the story, then it just doesn't matter. And that was a cold film, and it just turned into a zombie thing, and I just didn't like it at all. I was really disappointed with that, especially since the filmmakers were supposed to be such great horror directors or whatnot as well.
Starry Eyes is awesome. I mean, so I was disappointed.
So that was disappointing. And then Miss TV series, that was pretty bad. I mean, when you have a housewife overpowering a soldier and taking his weapon away from him, it's kind of like, okay, anything's a game in that series. So that was really bad. And they didn't take the jumping point from the novella of trying to find a safe haven. They just instead reworked it to make it sort of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a town. I didn't like that at all. And then this is where I got confused the last time, and I had something written down, and I realized I was talking about the wrong thing. And even though that movie is not great, it's actually the miniseries that I want to talk about. And this was done in 2004, and it has a standout cast. You got Rob Lowe, Andy Brower, Donald Sutherland, Samantha Mathis,
Salem's
Rutger
Lot.
Hauer, James Cromwell.
I convinced myself I liked it for a while.
James Cromwell, who we all know played the warden in The Green Mile. and that's TNT's 2004 Salem's Lot. I cannot believe with the talent on this project how bad it was. There was not one likable character in this whole show. Like even the bad guys were probably the most likable characters, and you got a problem if the most likable thing. Rob Lowe's actually not too bad, but man, some of the like the kid that played
Petrie,
Petrie.
yeah,
Petrie.
yeah.
He was just like a whiny teenager, like on the worst way. That's a terrible adaptation, and I just can't believe how bad that one is. It's and boy, did they ever get Father Callahan's storyline wrong in that one.
Amen to that. Yeah, man, this is.
I mean, fair enough. This came out before all the Dark Tower books came out, but holy cow, that like you don't take a character that's journey has stopped sort of halfway or midpoint in Salem's Lot, and then totally just kill him off in such a ridiculous way without any like Dark Tower. What a wonderful redemption arc for that character, and it just makes me mad every time I watch that. And James Cromwell is a hell of an actor too, you know. So it's just so disappointing. Yeah, that series really gets under my skin. I really don't like that one at all.
Well, it's bad. I do admit I do have Cromwell in my head canon now as Father Callahan. So that cast, like you said, the cast is phenomenal.
Yeah. I take him in a heartbeat in a Dark Tower movie still. Yeah, he'd be fantastic. I mean, he's old, but he's a hell of a character actor.
Yeah, to reveal my secret identity, guys, my last name is Callahan as far as like real names go, and so that was just a heartbreaking change of character in that particular regard, and I respect the hell out of Cromwell, so that was just, man, bummer status. And I think I'm going to echo Mike a little bit in the fact that, yeah, I think modernizing the story maybe did it a disservice to a degree with
Big
the
time.
fact that, I mean, 75 was when that book first came out. And there was just something to that just societal isolation of the small town Maine and stuff. And, you know, with modern technology being implemented and whatever, it just didn't work. That mine, as far as like just ones that were pretty no bueno. Cat's Eye is one that it was the first Stephen King thing that, as far as anthologies and as far as I think anything released to theaters, it was PG-13. So it was really Steve trying to go commercial. He wrote the script. He picked and chose a couple just very safe sort of stories, you know, although James, goodness, what the heck is his name?
James Woods.
Yeah, James Woods, man, as the guy who was trying to quit smoking in that. There's a scene in the middle of that film where he's tempted to smoke, and there's like dancing cigarette people and stuff when he's at this party. Like, there's so much bonkers silliness in that film, and it just, there's nothing scary about it. There's all of the callbacks at the beginning where you see Cujo and you see Christine and all this stuff. It was very much like Hollywood trying to just capitalize on the popularity, and the fact that he was behind the screenplay, it just, I'm like, oh, Steve, what were you doing, man? You were liking money and, you know, obviously all of the stuff that he was imbibing at the time, you know, not to throw my favorite author under the bus in that particular regard. So, yeah, Cat's Eye is bad, with the exception of the third story, the one that actually has Drew Barrymore with the weird little troll. I actually have a Cemetery Dance release. Shout out to Blue, obviously, up there. It's called It's called Screamplays, and it's got some great artwork from Glenn in there. That it's Steve's original bit of that story, which is really dope. So, you know, aside from that, I feel like the rest of it is relatively forgettable. The ledge is fine, whatever. We briefly touched on Mercy last time. I think I didn't even get the opportunity to mention it. It's based on Grandma, but it's got Carl from The Walking Dead, and it's a Blumhouse property, and Blumhouse are currently trying to redo Firestarter right now, for better or for worse, with the kid from High School Musical. But, Mercy, for whatever reason, it tried to do the thing that Maleficent did, and that so many other properties have done, where they tried to sympathize the villain, and I personally don't like that. You know, I feel like evil, like in its most incarnate aspect, when it's unexplained, it's a lot more frightening in some ways. And so, you know, the fact that the grandmother, you know, I don't know, the film is just bad, and it's before Blumhouse had really just made their mark as far as some of the big tentpole properties that they house now, like The Purge and various other things. But And then lastly, as far as television stuff goes, that God, I love the Tommyknockers book, man, but the Tommyknockers miniseries is such shite, and it just breaks my heart because you've got Tracy Lords and shooting like green lasers at people. Although I will say, dude from NYPD Blue is very solid as Guard, and he's another character very similar to Larry that I identify with as far as being flawed and trying to do the right thing and just, being misshapen and, misguided and whatever. So, I mean, Tim and Roberta were good in their interplay. Everybody else in that miniseries is just trash, unfortunately. So, James Wan, give us a good adaptation, hopefully. So we shall see. Okay, guys, awesome. So, since we've already kind of folded in biggest disappointment along with the most negative stuff, let's just jump right to biggest surprise. I know this is one obviously that we covered previously, but as far as one that you went in with lowered expectations, if anybody watched Mad TV back in the day, that one that just surprised you and you were like, damn, that was far better than I was anticipating, whether or not you had any familiarity as a constant reader with the source material. So Mike, man, what's your choice?
It sounds kind of funny now, but there was a time when I was like, I don't really know Mike Flanagan that well, and at the time I still believe that apparently Frank Darabont and maybe Rob Reiner were the only ones who understood King's material enough to add up to the screen. So when Gerald's Game was, I was like, there's no way they can make a Gerald's Game movie. There's no way. That book is one person. It's mostly inner monologue. There's no way they can make this. And it's going to be on Netflix. It's going to be another one of these just where they just slap his name on it. I was like, we're getting back to that, huh? Getting back to slapping Stephen King's name on stuff and making a crap adaptation. And I was blown away by that movie about how incredible. It's probably, I mean, easily a top 10 already Stephen King adaptation. And it's a book I always really enjoy because I thought that The Moonlight Man was one of the scariest things I've ever read in a Stephen King story, because I've always had that thing where you'll wake up in the middle of the night and there's someone in the freaking room. You just feel like that. And that's what that, it gave me chills when I read that book. And I thought they really nailed that part. They nailed that part so well that my wife is absolutely freaked out about that guy. We got a bookshelf right outside the bedroom. She makes me shut the door at night when I go to bed. And she thinks it's Moonlight Man, right? But just a powerhouse acting performance by Judd. She's just amazing. And that was where I really earned my trust with Mike Flanagan. And we already mentioned that he wants to do Dark Tower. I want him to do the Dark Tower. So
Amen.
Netflix just bought the rights to Conan from Amazon to adapt Conan the Barbarian. So I'm like, does that mean that they're willing to let the rights to Dark Tower go? Get in their ear, Mike. Please get in their ear. So, yeah, absolutely, completely surprised me. An honorable mention to Dr. Sleep, because I did not expect to like that movie. Now I know if Mike Flanagan makes it, it's going to be great. So I haven't even read Revival yet. I know it's going to be an amazing movie.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear Mike's thoughts on Revival. He's been teasing me for a while about that. So, Blue, what was one that just surprised you as far as just the quality of the adaptation?
Well, I've got to go with that Flanagan train of thought and say Dr. Sleep. There was a book that I liked, but I didn't love. And when I heard that Flanagan was adapting it and kind of trying to make a sequel to the film version of The Shining, as well as an adaptation of the Dr. Sleep novel, it's like, okay, so the Shining kind of ignored a lot of aspects of King's novel. King's novel kind of ignores a lot of the aspects of Kubrick's movie as far as it's a sequel to his novel, not to that movie. So how is Flanagan going to pull these two things together into something that's cohesive? And not only did he do it so that it was cohesive, but it was great. I mean, it's just a wonderful meshing of those two very different things. And I still don't know how he pulled it off. As Lou said, the extended version is the way to go. I've watched it a couple of times, and I'm just still amazed at the way he was able to make something that felt like a sequel to the movie and felt like a faithful adaptation of the book, and kind of brought the best of both of those things together. I think Ewan McGregor does a great job.
Amen.
I think the actress who played Rose the Hat, who unfortunately I'm blanking on her name, but
Rebecca
she did a
Ferguson. She's a
fantastic job.
badass.
Rebecca Ferguson, she just amazing presence in that movie. And in the book, I felt like the True Knot, the group of I think in the book they were kind of senior citizens riding around in RVs, sucking the life out of people, and it felt kind of cartoonish to me. And Flanagan turned that into this family of survivors with this kind of mother figure at the head who would do anything to protect the ones she loved. So you had some empathy with her, despite some of the terrible things that she did in the movie. So I just, I went in thinking, well, this is probably going to be like the book. I'm going to kind of sort of like it and then never think about it again. And now it's one that every time I start talking about it or thinking about it, I just want to go grab the Blu-ray and start watching again.
Yeah. Amen to that. And I actually have that Cemetery Dance version of Dr. Sleep Blue. It's another prize one in my collection, man. So yeah,
that's another one you have that I don't have. So I just need your address, and we'll take it.
In the deadly desert of Arizona. Yes. Yeah, man.
It's a bit of a drive for me, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, next time I'm visiting over there, seeing the little brother in the South and stuff. So, so Sarah, what are a few that, or just, I mean, anything that comes to mind, not multiple titles necessarily, but if you have something that really just blew you away and you were like, damn, I thought that was going to kind of suck, and this was very pleasantly, surprisingly good.
Well, I mean, Gerald's Game was on that list because actually you guys both had it. Like, Dr. Sleep was on that list, but with Dr. Sleep, I felt like I read the book to see the movie. Like, I was just like, well, I got to read the book now. Like, Ewan McGregor's in this great movie. Like, I didn't see it yet, but I was just like, Ewan McGregor's in it. I'm going to go see it. Like, so I had to read the book. And then I was just really pleasantly surprised with how well the balance between the movie and the book to create something new and I liked the risks that were taken in the story in the movie that didn't quite get done in the book, because in the book I felt like everything was a little too planned and was like, a little too, you knew everyone was going to win, and like that's not how Stephen King rolls usually. Usually someone's dropping off a cliff really quickly. But not to kill that one. Gerald's Game was one where I was just like, that when I watched it, I was like freaked out. It scared the crap out of me, Moonlight Man. But another one that didn't get covered was Big Driver, which I thought would never be made into a movie because of the source material, because it's so problematic, because it's so hard to put on film. And it ended up kind of like a hard candy or like some of those revenge horrors, which I dig them. So, I was really happy with Marie Bello's performance. You have everyone, you have her thinking everything's going to be fine, and then ends up in this, harsh reality of the small town. It's, I like how Stephen King does that as well. It makes people think they're safe because they're a good writer and people know their name, and then something really terrible befalls them, and that's perfectly encapsulated in Big Driver. And then how you become what you have to be in those moments. So, and that character Tess Thorne, I think is her name, becomes that. And the book, that just, I had to read to the end of that story in the middle of the night and read it till dawn. So it's just like, wow. So those are some of my, like some standbys, and then that's the standout, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, Lifetime Channel. I mean, adapting King very adeptly, surprisingly, and I mean, Bello's performance is terrific. It's in Full Dark No Stars, if I recall correctly, which is going to be my December book of the month on Hail to Stephen King. So, fun there for its 5-year anniversary. Tossing it to Lou, some just adaptations that you were genuinely surprised at the quality that they brought.
Well, I'm another Flanagan fan, so those Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep have already been mentioned. And I think after Gerald's Game and the Haunting of Hill House, I was stoked for Dr. Sleep. So I still think Gerald's Game probably surprised me more because it was such an internal one person, sort of like a Rear Window, one person in one room for the whole movie kind of story. Bruce Greenwood is always fantastic. So got to put in my props for Canadian boy, good Canadian
Amen.
boy there.
There you
So, and it's and then I watched Hush from Flanagan, and I thought that was a pretty solid, decent little thriller. Kind of the same idea as Gerald's Game in a way.
Him and his wife, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and she was deaf, and that some great scenes in there. And then I'm going to bring it up again, the Dead Zone TV series. I know Blue has different opinion on it, but I think the first 4 seasons are solid. Especially, as any TV series, they get progressively weaker, but it straddled that line of a season-long arc with the sort of like the case of the week kind of storyline pretty well, I thought, and I really how they expanded the whole relationship between him and Sarah. And when they brought Stilson in season 3, he was a good addition to the show as well. So I just thought that was, pretty amazing to take what was a fairly contained story and extend it for that long, because we've seen, like with The Mist and other things where they just couldn't pull that trick at all. So it's dated, but I still quite enjoyed it quite a bit.
Now, so since I haven't watched it, Lou, do they have any of the Frank Dodd stuff, or does that just not?
Yes,
yes they do. Okay, cool.
First episode.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't checked out any of it yet. That and Haven, as I think I mentioned previously, and I just got done rereading Colorado Kid, and that's a great little read, man. That's a really fun one.
John Patrick Flannery plays Stilson in that. He's really good.
Seriously, Young Indiana Jones.
So if you're a Boondock Saints guy, you're gonna love it.
Oh man, craziness. Okay. Well, as far as surprises for me, guys, I'm shocked because we touched upon this during the recording that me and Cecil messed up, which was more so my fault than anybody's. But that Storm of the Century was one that I saw as a kid, and I thought it was boring. I was like, it's just people talking, and I didn't fully grasp the ideas of self-preservation and degaff about everybody else if they're not your like immediate family or whatever. And yes, it's a little long in the tooth, but as far as the stuff that he scripted specifically for television, Storm of the Century, man, give me what I want and I'll go away. That's one of the most iconic King lines, aside from, I mean, maybe the beginning of Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, where it's like, life has teeth and all that stuff. It's just, it resonates with me very, very specifically. And the ending of Storm of the Century, holy cow, it's messed up.
King can't write an ending? I called your bluff on that one. Watch Storm of the Century and tell me he can't write an ending. Holy hell.
Yeah, Mike is right 100% about that. And then as far as, this is a more unpopular opinion. I mentioned this last time, guys. I actually really like the Sci-Fi Channel remake of Children of the Corn. The fact that it goes for the brutal, the fact that it actually has an ending that is significantly closer to the ending of the short story from Night Shift. I mean, spoilers, people die, and it's not like the whole, the puppy dogs and ice cream, if I'm the quote swingers, it's not that sort of ending like you get in the Linda Hamilton 80s version. Now, I prefer Isaac and some of the villains kids in that previous one, but I felt like the scripting was a little bit tighter, a little bit more vicious, and yeah, man, I really enjoyed that.
You sound like me defending Thinner as a really good movie.
As I have defended as well, Mike. I mean,
I love Thinner.
I think last time Blue was the one who hated on, right? Yeah, check out the audiobook with dude voicing it, awesome. which is really great. So we kind of covered disappointments. I mean, at least a little bit. If you guys want to do just a quick lightning round of disappointment, I know Dark Tower is the obvious blemish, but I
got a different one.
Yeah, I said Cell last time was one that, man, with King scripting it, and the fact that I love that book, and it's one of those books that you see at the Salvation Army, at the Goodwills, at the Savers here in Arizona. It's one that a lot of people just were like, yeah, this is whatever. But it's basically King being respectful and trying to do kind of his version of the Crazies, if I want to be specific, and he dedicates the book to Romero. So that was one that I thought was going to be great. They got a few of the beats right. I think Lou mentioned last time that, they had the great airport scene, and everything else was just kind of meh, from there. So, yeah, with Cusack and, Samuel L. Jackson reteaming, I thought that one was going to be good. But as far as disappointments besides the Dark Tower and the debacle that was, Mike, what's one that comes to mind, man?
I think when you get Romero and Stephen King working together, we should get better than we got with The Dark Half. I really think that's one I wouldn't mind seeing them maybe try again. I think maybe it could be done better when you actually do kind of move it to modern day, but I'm afraid it would kind of feel almost a little too secret window-ish if they tried to do it now. So I don't really know if people were going to kind of fall for that shtick. But also, I guess the Shining adaptation on TV, because I was like, okay, this one's written by King. Maybe he'll be more happy with it now. And it was just, no, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all.
Amen to that. Yeah, as much as I like that kiss and that's what I've been missing. I mean, with the
exception, always got the shrubs in it. It's gonna be better. Oh no, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, a stronger Wendy Torrance, I will give that at least some credit.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, like dude from Wings, I mean, he's no Jack. So, Blue, what's a disappointment that comes to mind, sir?
Well, definitely the Shining miniseries written by King. Like you, Mike, I thought, okay, here's his opportunity to fix all of the things that he didn't like about the movie, and I don't know, it just didn't work for me on a lot of levels. Also, Sleepwalkers was one that it's not really an adaptation, but I was like, okay, King's writing a movie for the big screen, should be good, and wow, I don't know what happened. There was nothing redeemable about that one either. It just I don't even see that one. It seems like a lot of bad movies 20 or 30 years down the line get some renewed appreciation, and people start finding the good things in them, but good luck with Sleepwalkers. I don't know that there's any redeeming qualities in that one at all.
Yeah, Sleepwalkers for me is like coked out King crazy, unfortunately, if I'm going to be like really candid about it. And yet some stuff, like I just rewatched Graveyard Shift the other night because it celebrates its anniversary here in October, and so I filmed a Hail to Stephen King episode. And that's one that, I mean, the actor from the Monster Squad who plays Warwick, he's doing that accent, and there is some charm to that. And I mean, obviously, Brad Dourif as the exterminator, he steals that scene where he's talking about the VC rats and all that stuff. Like, it's a stupid movie, but yet it has its moments where it's entertaining and it's fun.
It's at least entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. Sarah, what's one as far as you had expectations, perhaps, and you were just like, oof, what happened there?
Well, I mean, I think I went over the ones that I really didn't like, and but yeah, so there was Bag of Bones, but I revisited Needful Things because it's like something about Needful Things is itching at me, and I actually, so I was like, I'm watching the whole movie and I'm going through it, and the truth is, I really, really loved the execution of Needful Things, but the book, when I read it, was so much better than the movie. So I don't know if that even counts, because I was just like, the movie was pretty awesome in its own respect, but then when I read the book, I was just like, the movie didn't really capture that these people were protecting their valuable thing, their heart's desire. Like, it didn't, it sent a message that it was just mischief making, and mischief making can cause people to kill each other. But instead of the book, which really kind of encapsulated that once you have that heart's desire, that there's nothing that will get you in the way of protecting it. And so the scene that is in Needful Things, where you've got Amanda Plummer with the cleaver, and you've got the other actress who plays Wilma something, with the knife. Like in the book, it's pretty awesome in the movie, but it is killer in the book. You feel like it's earned in all of the tension that is, that you can find in a Stephen King novel. You're just like, they're going to go at it on the street in a suburb with a cleaver and a kitchen knife, and and they're both going to end up dead. Like, that's, I don't know. That sells it. And it's like, it was pretty nice and gory in the movie, but I remember reading that just on an adrenaline rush in the book, where I was just like, oh my God, they're gonna do it. So I don't even know if that counts as a disappointment, but I was just like, there are some great lines in the movie, but the book was pretty epic. That's all I got.
Sheriff Pangborn, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed Harris, man.
Good old Ed.
Yeah, no, Sarah, that totally qualifies though, because of the fact that there is a much more inherent essence of brutality in the source material of the last Castle Rock book, as he dubbed it, at least at the time, and we know that wasn't necessarily the case. Although I do champion the hell out of Max von Sydow. I thought he as Leland just epitomized it perfectly. That's one of the few stories where I would love to see a prequel or a sequel with him as a villain in a different community, a different part of the world, wherever the hell. I think that could be incredibly compelling, and that would be really dope. As far as disappointments, Lou, what is one that comes to mind, good sir? Maybe one that somebody hasn't mentioned yet?
Well, I think this one won't sit well with you guys at the Horror Channel, because I think most of you actually prefer the second one to the first one. But I thought the second It movie was a big disappointment. And I think it makes a good case for filming the story all at once, much like Lord of the Rings filmed all three books at once, because that way you can't react to what the audience is, the things that they got them really excited. Because the second movie tried to do what I was afraid they were going to do, is re-inject the kids back into the movie way too much. We have these whole new cast characters. We need to get to identify and get emotionally invested in those characters. And because the kids kept showing up, it caused this disconnect with the adult characters that, to me, just crippled that movie terribly, and led to some pretty bad CGI, too, as they tried to make some of the kids look the way they did in the first movie. The other thing that I was disappointed with that movie was the, I think the thing that hurt the movie, I should say, is even though he's good in the movie, the guy's name's escaping me now, the guy that played the funny guy. Bill Hader. Bill Hader. Yeah, he had great laughs, but the problem was they came at the end of every scary sequence, which just basically killed any of the horror tension that would go into the next scene. So you're basically reset, scary scene reset, scary scene reset. So there was never this building up towards the climax, and I just think that needed to be handled a little more adroitly to keep the tension going. Like that, the laugh should have came maybe halfway through the scene, and then let's get back to the horror again. But so the pacing in that movie just didn't work for me, and the explanation about where it came from, I mean, in the book it's kind of bonkers too, but in the movie, making some sort of Indian, North Native American Indian kind of reference, and Mike giving the spiked drink to his buddy without telling him. It's like, seriously, dude, like you're gonna roofie him and not even tell him? Like it's, it was pretty bad. So I was really disappointed with that, and it's far inferior to the first one.
Well, obviously, as I always contend, art is subjective, and so on and so forth. I actually preferred them mirroring the book more so and jumping back and forth between the kids and the adults as they did in the original miniseries. But and also, like a scene like Adrian's death at the beginning, I never thought that they would so boldly go and do that, and with the brutality that they exuded. But you're totally right about the fact that I mean, where that 80s pop song comes on and the barfing like halfway through, that was one of the scenes that just had me kind of scratching my head a little bit. And yeah, there was disappointing aspects to it chapter 2, but I still Hey, I'll just watch the original miniseries. Is probably what it boils down to. If I'm going to be fair about it. So we're actually really good on time, guys. Remember, I told you I was going to hopefully only use about half of your time in comparison
So
to
don't
last
skip
time.
remake this time, because I got a great
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So, well, should we jump to remake, or should we jump to most wanted adaptation? So let's just jump to remake because we skipped it last time. And since Mike obviously has an awesome choice, so everybody, for a proper, yeah, I was just smashing the skins yesterday, and I'm feeling sore and stuff. But so for a property that has already been either done as a miniseries, as a feature film, what do you think could be readapted better, Mike?
Well, I think since Lou kind of already set the stage for this one, it's got to be Salem's Lot, because the main reason is I think that people need to remember that vampires are freaking scary. They're not sexy. And I think that we've kind of gotten away from that as a society. I think it was once Anne Rice shifted her vampires from scary to sexy, it just started this whole trend where it's like, well, vampires are only sexy now. And I mean, even if you think about something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the vampires could still be very scary when they needed to be. Yeah. And I feel like everything now has just made vampires just like super sexy. Like, what happened to scary vampires? You know, I mean, even when they make Dracula movies now, he's not scary anymore. So I think that I heard James Wan was like involved. It was like, I think it's the Conjuring team, I believe, it's making the say this up, but that might have changed by now. It seems like that changes all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You've got this humongous list of all this stuff that's working on. You're probably more up to it, but I would love to see a more faithful thing. And do like the Conjuring films and make it take place in the 70s or 80s. Do not modernize Salem's Lot. Yeah. That way you can make small town Maine, you can make Castle Rock, you can make a small town Maine look like a small town without, you know, cell phones and paparazzi and fancy cars and all this stupid pop music like you talked about. The MCU humor stuff and I'll agree with you there, Lou. By the way, I don't want that anymore. Stop taking the fun out of scary movies to make it fun. Does that make sense? Stop taking the fun out of scary movies. Stop taking the scary moments away by adding a joke at the end. Yeah. I hate that so much. That's MCU humor, and I hate it. Okay, I'm ranting. I apologize.
No, I want you, Mike. I want you to rant. I mean, that's why I watch your channel on the weekly, dude.
Make the joke at the beginning, and then do the horror.
I mean, think about it. Every MCU movie, whenever anything gets serious, what do? They make some joke that's going to make my kid laugh, and it makes my kid laugh, but it frustrates me as the grumpy old man next to him.
Well, you just have to watch The Boys on.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually have a friend in Toronto who is like right by where they filmed that, and he was just talking to me about it the other day. So yeah, The Boys is great.
Show.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Garth Ennis, man. That guy's terrific. Did Preacher. Anyway, Blue, so what is a remake that you think really needs to give proper justice to the source material where they maybe didn't do the best job previously?
Well, I got to go back to one I mentioned earlier, and that's Bag of Bones. I just think that there is a good story just waiting to be put on film, suspenseful. And you know, when you read the book and you look at what it's about, really at its core, that would be really relevant to what we're going through today. So
true.
Think about that. I would love to see somebody. I would love to see somebody put just money at it, but really put some thought into a script that would bring out those elements, that would bring out that real suspense. It's got a great setting. I mean, you're talking about an isolated cabin, but there's just so much that I think is going for it, that in the right hands it could be an amazing movie, and maybe shine a light on a book that I think deserves a bit better treatment too.
Yeah, that's one that won the Bram Stoker Award, and yet I've given it a lot of vitriol over the years. I mean, it's more so the child custody aspects and things like that I just it didn't jive with me. But I love the backstory of Rita.
There's some
and
big
her as a
leaps
singer.
of logic when it comes to that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I think a good movie could shape that and adapt that and change that to what it needs to be. And like I said, just pull the good stuff out of it that I think is there.
True that. Sarah, what is something that you have seen on screen before from King, and you're just like, that didn't cut it. I think they could do a better job with the source material.
Yeah, I have to agree with Blue on Bag of Bones. I feel like it could be really, really good, and it just wasn't treated right. Also, Dark Half, maybe, like, I think Dark Half could come back in a good film. But yeah, I'm just like, I was trying to think of remakes, and I was just like, yeah, I feel like with Stephen King, you have, real opportunity to keep remaking if you want to. You just can't, you can't synopsize the material. Like, you can't just, pretend that it's less of a story than it is, and just try to grab the bag of money. Like, you have to I mean, like that, and that's kind of what it is. It's just like, oh, it's got Stephen King strapped onto it, like, it'll make money no matter what. So sometimes the sensitivity is just not there to the material, and it's just like, but the characters are there, and he takes the risks, and he puts them off cliffs, and so yeah, there's no reason not to make Bag of Bones and make it a good. And I really think, of course, Dark Tower should be remade with some sensitivities, and probably you could probably do that out of order in the book order, so that people get drawn into different areas of it first. I was just thinking that, so that you can basically jump around a little bit more and draw people in to. I felt like the movie was trying to do too much. Like, they're trying to placate the Dark Tower fans, which they didn't do at all, and then they didn't. They're just like, oh, well, here, we'll show you all the things, and you're just like, that's not what Dark Tower is. Dark Tower, it's an epic long opus. You can't just synopsize it. And the only other thing that you'd want to do with Dark Tower is to get people to read the books. So, and that didn't happen either. So you're not creating interest to drum up, to have that cross pollination between the two, between cinema and the page. So I think they can do that. I think that is possible. So they should do it.
I agree.
Amen to that. Yeah. And I mean, that's the approach they were trying to take with that Amazon television series was similar to what they did with the Marvel comic books, where they just went back to young Roland that we see in the fourth book and in the first book, and they were just going to chronologically kind of go through, all of that stuff. And I think that could have worked, but then there's others who argue that the, dimensional jumping is so inherently important in the process of the storytelling. You need people to be on board for that right away. So, nonetheless, yes, I feel like we need that to be remade. And Mike Flanagan, please, sir, please. Lou, last but most certainly not least, sir.
Well, I'm doubly mad at Mike because he took my pick for Salem's Lot, and plus he's already read the
But
next.
You probably have better reasons than my rant.
No, they're the exact same reasons too. So plus you've already read the latest Harry Dresden book, so I'm really mad at you.
That's good. Really good.
Oh yeah, I saw you're like 200 pages in, right?
I'm gonna just pick something that I haven't mentioned before, or maybe I did mention it briefly last time, and I'm gonna go with the Golden Years. Which was a short-lived TV series, only went for maybe half a season, and it's
CBS.
King created it especially for TV, much like Storm of the Century. So it doesn't have an end point yet. So it would be a great property for Mike Flanagan to do on Netflix or something like that. Might as well throw more work out to you, Mr. Flanagan. But it's basically the story about a janitor who works at a research lab and gets exposed to something which causes him to start reverse aging and picking up powers. And that's kind of where the story ended, just when he started to discover his powers. So that would be a pretty cool limited series, I would think I would be. I was down for that, and I just love the theme song with David Bowie. So let's do it.
Yeah. I was about to say that's actually one of the few that I have yet to properly review on the channel and stuff. But yeah, that was. I mean, Bowie's song is terrific.
Yeah.
So the one that this is going to be a little bit off center. I actually really think, especially after a recent reread, and we had a patron for the horror show request us to review it, but I think Sometimes They Come Back could be a very interesting adaptation if it was more faithful to just nastiness of the short of the short story, because like the adaptation, which was made for TV, and it's very just kind of softened in that regard. In the actual short story itself, we're talking like conjuring a demon to extract revenge, and it's really nasty and really messed up. And I mean, that's one that you could either go back to the 50s, or you could Stranger Things / It, kind of like what they did there, and you could set it in the 80s or whatever, sort of situation, as far as these, the nasty kids who come back and start showing up in present day. That's one that I think, with a hard R and with the brutality, and if they just really just were faithful to the messed up ending of it, and just that sort of demonic conjuring, that's a short story from Night Shift, man. I mean, I don't know. I think it's one that doesn't really get the sort of just attention and, approval all too often that it deserves. So we're in the last bit, guys, and obviously I extend a grande gracias for everybody who has tuned into this for Phoenix FearCon, but this is the last round, the last turn of the wheel, so to speak, everybody, and this is the most excited, most anticipated adaptation that is on the forefront. Yes, we were joking about Firestarter with Zac Efron earlier. That is not my most anticipated, even if they're talking about there's going to be people melting, and it's going to be, like body melt from Australia in the 90s or whatever. That's cool. I'll believe it when I see it.
What if Zac Efron's playing Charlie? What would you do then?
Well, I mean, in a forward-moving Hollywood, I have a comment that I could say, but I'm gonna relent because that's not cool. As far as this lengthy list that I sent all of you guys, which essentially entails, remakes of the aforementioned Salem Slot and The Dark Half and the Tommy Knockers and so many other things. As far as stuff that's coming through the pipeline, that Mike's Book Reviews, what do you have the most excitement for, sir?
Look, I know you and I both have. We've spoken many times about our apprehension about this new adaptation of The Stand.
Yeah.
I thought it needed to be made. I really did. And here's the thing. I'm cautious optimism. It's because I know that Josh Boone is a constant reader, and I know that he loves this book. But when I hear about what you mentioned earlier, Lou, about they being maybe one of the finest opening scenes of any Stephen King adaptation, the first thing that they said, that Entertainment Weekly article, was, "Oh yeah, we're starting it here," and it's like, what? That's where you're starting the book? That makes no sense whatsoever. You're taking the heart from the beginning of that book and you're just completely changing it. So yeah, I'm worried about it, but it's my second favorite Stephen King book of all time. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be impossible for me not to be excited about it. Even some of the casting I won't get into. But again, let's wait till we see him on screen, right? That's what I always try to say. It's my Heath Ledger rule. Wait until you see it on screen. But yeah. I got to say The Stand just because of how much I love that story. So I hope Josh Boone really loves it as much as he says he does.
Yeah, because he was like exchanging letters with Stephen King as a kid. Like, we're talking reaching that far back. Which
yeah, so his parents got rid of all of his books, and he wrote Stephen King and told him, and Stephen King like signed all of his books in hardcover and FedExed it to him. And his parents were like, "Well, maybe he's not such a bad guy after all." I thought that was a great story.
Yeah. He does a heck of an interview with Kevin Smith on Hollywood Babylon podcast. You should find that episode. It's like 2 hours long, and yeah, when you listen to him talk about King, it's like, holy shit, this is the right guy for us. But like Mike said, I'm worried about the way they're approaching this adaptation, messing up the timeline and dark towering it a bit. I think we'll see.
Yeah. Starting in the middle, I'm not. I have mixed feelings about that too. So.
How did you like his directing for the Mutant movie?
I actually really like the New Mutants. I mean, it's not great, but it was serviceable enough. I know we briefly touched upon it when we previously tried to record this, but at least I commend it for doing something different as far as an X-Men movie goes. It was more enjoyable than Phoenix and Apocalypse and some of those others. But
never heard of.
Yeah. Amen, Mike. Man, yeah. Disappointment, dude. Blue, what, sir, are you most anticipating as far as I sent you guys the list. It is lengthy. I actually rattled it all off the last time we tried to record this, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to just berate the audience's ears. Mr. Gilliland, what is one that you are just most anticipating?
Well, my initial answer was Revival with Mike Flanagan, because I think that's the perfect marriage of source material and filmmaker, based on what he's been able to do with his other King works. It's just such a very dark and bleak book, but there is heart to it, and so I'm really excited to see what Flanagan does with that. But then you sent me the list and you mentioned it when we did this the first time, and Drunken Fireworks is being made into a movie. And so, I first came across that story in the audio version, and I loved it. And, I don't know that I would have liked it as much if I had read it first, just because the person doing the audio version just does a great job in acting it out and really bringing that to life. I can't imagine how they're going to make a movie out of that, but I'll be there opening night just to see how they pull it off.
Amen. All right. Yeah. That's one that it's a darkly comedic sort of story, which is interesting. And the fact that Franco, who already has his, and that's actually one thing that we didn't mention, is how great Franco was in 11/22/63. I'm shocked that I forgot to, forgot to mention that. That's definitely an honorable mention. Cecil gives me so much crap about honorable mentions on things like this, but yes, Hulu's 11/22 is terrific. But he's the one who's apparently behind this Drunken Fireworks that they're trying to put together, and I would be down for this silly competitive sort of story going on where people are trying to just outshine each other in that regard.
Is Franco like a huge King fan? Because I heard he does some audiobooks of King stuff too. I don't know which one.
He actually did the Dead Zone.
Oh, so he must be a big fan.
Yeah. So hey, more CRs.
I knew I liked him.
Yeah, he's not too shabby. So Sarah, I know I sent a very lengthy list, head spinning in its magnitude. What's the one maybe that jumped out to you?
I was actually Lizzie's story taken with Gaumont Television. They did. I think they started the Hannibal series, and I liked what they were doing with that. So, and I've liked what they've done in the past. We'll see. I don't know. I liked Lizzie's story. It was one of those that stuck with me. I'd like to see it on screen. That's also, I think you showed me there was the Talisman, Amblin's working on it. So those are my two anticipated. I mean, of course, I'm going to see The Stand. Like, who won't? But we'll see how that works out. But the Talisman hasn't been made yet, and neither has Lizzie's story. So I'm just like, I'd be down to see both of those and see how they handle the material.
Yeah, the amount of talent behind Lyses or Lyses or whatever the proper pronunciation is.
Right? How do you even say her name?
I've heard Lyses when I listened to the audiobook, but it's tomato. Who cares? Clive Owen, Julianne Moore, Dane DeHaan as that villainous little bastard who is the obsessive fan. Like, I'm very excited about that story and the adaptation. Apparently, they were right at the very end of filming before all of the Rona stuff, my Rona went down. And so they've apparently finished that. King scripted everything, which I did a video about last year where it's like, well, for better or for worse, King adapting his own material. As we've seen, sometimes you get Pet Sematary and then sometimes you get Cell. So it's like, I don't always know what to expect, but that's one that I'm very stoked about. And passing it along to Lou. What is one you're stoked for, sir?
Well, obviously the Stand's already been mentioned, so I'll throw out another one that I think could be just as relevant from a social standpoint is the Long Walk.
Yeah.
But this one would have to be a hard R, and but I think it would be a great vehicle for a microcosm of the world. If it's U.S. focused or just the world in general, because of the proliferation of tribalism, and I think a lot of it's powered by social media. So I could just imagine having this sort of event with all these people tweeting or Instagramming and whatnot, and maybe they could even do like two races or two walks, have one all boys and one all girls, and have like different issues within each group. And I think that that's a great Trojan horse vehicle of a story that could really have a lot of impact. And getting people to get to like these characters, because I think we all find it, if if you're tweeting with somebody on the internet, it can really degenerate quickly. But if you sit down and have a coffee with the guy, you'll okay, yeah, we don't agree on this, but you still walk him and say, yeah, he's a pretty decent dude. I don't agree with everything he says, and I would like to see. I think that's a form of communication that movies can still do, that social media just sort of amplifies driver rage, and I think we need a lot more of these connecting types of stories. And it's going to be interesting to see how all these projects are going to play out, like, because what's going to be the avenue for our theaters, and is this all going to go to streaming? And like we really need this stuff, but the communal experience is not going to be there. I'm not sure. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think the Long Walk and the Stand, like King's just, he's a somebody called him a noticer. He really just looks around to see what's going on in the world today that I can use to write about. And the Stand and the Long Walk are two of those stories that I think do that. And I really would love to see that, because the Long Walk could be pretty emotional. It would be like, The Walking Dead in 2 hours. Like, if you did a story like that, can you imagine how intense that would be, as opposed to a 9-10 episode series? That could be something really, really hardcore.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder if they will, like, Hunger Games it, if they will, basically take the, Battle Royale and just kind of defang and declaw it to a degree, as opposed to really giving
you really got to, like, can you imagine the echo of the gunshots and like just seeing a body driven to the ground? That especially like a young person, it's even more wrenching, right? So it could be really powerful how they did it.
Yeah, with him just like disillusioned and practically on the verge of death, stumbling towards victory, and it's a great book, guys. If you haven't checked out that, it's Stephen King writing under the name of Richard Bachman, and it's awesome. So I'm gonna, as excited as I am for The Stand, as apprehensive as I am for The Stand, the couple that I just want to mention really quickly. So I was not the biggest fan of Sleeping Beauties. And it was more so with the fact that it was just so slow as it got to its middle portion. I felt like the setup was terrific, as far as just women suddenly falling asleep, and if you awaken them, they're basically like Romero's Crazies, Rage, Zombie, whatever sort of thing. They're adapting it into a comic right now, but I feel like in a long form of visual storytelling, maybe it would serve the source material a little bit better. It's coming to the AMC network. Owen is actually developing it. Owen King, King's younger son, is he's very much in the process there, scripting some of the episodes. So that's one that I'm curious about. And then another television incarnation. So as opposed to calling it N, they're calling it 8, and I'm assuming that's with reference to the just circle of stones that our proverbial character comes into contact with. I'm trying to double check the network. So it's called Gamont. It's like a smaller cable network of some sort, but N is one of those stories about the contagiousness of craziness, and it was fantastically adapted as a Marvel comic book. It's also a visual comic that is available on iTunes. You can watch it for free on YouTube and stuff, and N is one of those that just disturbed me so thoroughly. I think Just After Sunset, as far as like constant reader stuff goes, is one of my favorite collections of King stuff, because it is very much of the time. It's very post 9/11 in just the framing of so many of the stories, and just this breeding uncertainty and stuff. And so yes, 8, which is a weird title. It's not one that's going to like go out and grasp people as far as it, but they'll probably advertise it as from the mind of Stephen King comes 8, and everybody will hopefully be on board and give it a chance. So I'm definitely all for that, but I am very appreciative, and all for anybody who took the time here at Phoenix FearCon to check out this panel. We are going from October 16th through December 31st. So if you have purchased tickets, you're going to have the opportunity to check out this panel as many times as you want for free. Show it to your friends, spread the word, and I'm going to toss it to the respective panelists. So if you want more information from them about what they do as far as creativity and covering the aforementioned, they can give you all the details. So first to Mr. Mike.
My name is Mike. I run a channel called Mike's Book Reviews, which obviously I talk about books. It's a fantasy, sci-fi, horror is kind of what I really just dig into. But really the point of the channel was to create discussion, because I feel like in this time we're in right now, people just can't talk to each other anymore. So I encourage people to talk and disagree and still be pals afterwards. But I did want to kind of give a special mention right now, because it's Stephen King, is I do this thing called Into the Multiverse, where I break down every Stephen King book and talk about the connections to all these other stories and things like that. That's actually how me and Jaime actually got kind of close here. But I am also kind of stepping onto him and Cecil's ground in October. The whole month of October is 100% horror themed. So I'm going to be diving into things like Clive Barker that I've never done before. And I'm very, very excited about that. So I hope you'll stop by. Mike's Book Reviews on YouTube.
Yes, he is a weekly person that I check out with Vigilance. Mike is a badass, and he tons of insightful information, so please check him out. And tossing it over to Sir Gilliand.
All right. Well, again, I work with Cemetery Dance Publications, and we're do a lot of special edition books and Stephen King and a whole lot of other authors. We have a magazine that we have a new issue that's just about done. We should have that out by the end of the year. So just look for Cemetery Dance on Twitter and Facebook, and we're constantly putting out what we've got going on right there. And Mike, I just want to say I love what you said about discussion. You know, it's so great that, for example, Lou can still have a civil discussion with me, even though he and I are so different in our feelings over the Dead Zone TV show, and that's the way it ought to be.
Exactly.
Just because we have different tastes doesn't mean that we're just not a couple of Stephen King fans. So yeah, I just love what you said and wanted to echo that.
Nothing's more subjective than a book, right? So I always say, let's talk about it.
Art in general.
Amen, guys. Sarah, any information about stuff that you were up to, or anything you want to tell the peeps?
I'm working on a creative project. It's a film project with Yonder Window, and that's going to be released on Facebook sometime in November. So if you want to take a look at that. Also, I have my Instagram, which has some of my photography. It's Flammable Mischievous. And yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And, we'll see what's up in the future.
Damn easy. Well, I'm glad that this went a little smoother than the previous time and the previous time when we did the Dark Tower panel, because you remember how that went, right?
It was great. I had a great time.
It was one co-panelist in particular for that Dark Tower panel was a little on the tipsy side. Anyway. So, Lou, last but certainly not least, give them some info about your podcast, sir.
Sure, it's the Stephen King Podcast. If you search for that, you'll find it. It's on Twitter. I'm at @skingpodcast. Primarily, it's Stephen King focused. I do an alternative track though that where I interview new writers that are just up and coming or trying to get established. So that's been a great experience as well, because I'm always really curious about the writer's craft and how each person approaches it in a different way. So. Yeah, that's where you'll find me mainly, and I'm still hoping that me and Mr. Fuego will get together to do that subjectivity exercise when talking about elevation.
Yes, indeed, one that I wasn't particularly kind to because it echoed certain sentiments, but then again, has King not returned to certain topics before with Secret Window, Secret Garden, and yes, it's all about write what you know, I suppose. So that's one that I'm definitely going to re-examine. But I've been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I have a personal YouTube channel called Infuegotainment. It's much more in comparison with the horror show, but that's where I do the non-spectacular coverage. I also have a band called Chiron, and we play horror metal, and we have a cover of Guns N' Roses Civil War that by the time this panel is premiering, the music video that I directed should be up on YouTube. So I look forward to that. And once again, a grande gracias to the entire panel of just fantastic people, this proverbial Ka-Tet, if you will. So yes, thanks everybody. I appreciate all of you, and until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers, viewers alike, say thank you to my panel and to all of you who are checking this out at Phoenix FearCon. Hopefully we get to do more of this sooner rather than later, and until then, stay scared, and obviously read Stephen King, but, you know, you can cheat and watch some Stephen King, at least this time.
Yep. Long days and pleasant nights.